There's no mystery surrounding what bike BMW targeted with its all-new S1000XR. An adventure model sporting a Superbike-derived engine, top-shelf suspension, and braking components, all of which are enhanced by cutting-edge electronics. It all sounds very Ducati multistrada-ish, doesn't it? And while it might be terribly bad form to drone on about another manufacturer's bike while reviewing its exciting new competitor, the Multistrada demands mention for its impact on the large displacement adventure segment. The redesigned 2010 Multistrada completely upended performance expectations with its 160 horsepower twin and sporting chassis. The Ducati could get dirty too, if it really had to, but the Italian ADV bike was so much more sport bike than adventure tourer that it wasn't really a true adventure bike at all. Instead it carved out a sub-niche of its own. BMW bills the S1000XR as an adventure sport, the best descriptor I've heard for this not quite true ADV segment, and it takes dead aim at the Multistrada. The XR sources the 999 cubic centimeters inline-4 BMW originally developed for its popular S1000RR Superbike. Specifically, the XR utilizes the engine spec powering its Street Fighter sibling, the S1000R, which trades the RR's top-end peak power for a more robust bottom and mid-range. That means the R/XR engine gives up the RR's face-melting 200 horsepower claims for a mere 160 ponies. So, more like face-blistering power. The S1000R turned the Moto USA dyno to 150 rear-wheel HP and 76.8 lb-ft torque. A sophisticated electronics package harnesses the XR's engine power, as well as integrates actions from the traction control, braking and suspension. The various electronic systems and the manner in which they weave together is confusing to explain, or at least it is to me, so my apologies for the technical weeds I'm about to drag you through, but here goes. The base model XR, $16,350, comes with two ride mode settings, rain and road. The standard XR also includes BMW's familiar ASC, automatic stability control, system and semi-integral ABS. Rain mode softens power delivery and mellows throttle response, with the ABS and ASC set up for quick intervention on wet roads. The road setting delivers the XR's standard 160 HP dosage of power, with the traction/braking aids calibrated for dry roads. Things get interesting, and more complicated, with the Ride Modes Pro option. Offered as a standalone $450 upgrade or included in the $2,400 premium package, Ride Modes Pro adds Dynamic and Dynamic Pro to the Ride Mode setting options. Ride Modes Pro also replaces ASC with the more advanced DDC, Dynamic Traction Control, and likewise upgrades the standard issue ABS to ABS Pro, with the XR being the first BMW, besides the HP4, to offer ABS Pro as a factory option, though it is now offered on other 2016 models and as a retrofit on previous select models, like the RR. The dynamic ride modes offer the same 160 horsepower as the baseline road setting, but uncork the throttle for more immediate responsiveness. The bigger differences in the dynamic ride modes are intervention settings for DDC and ABS, with dynamic permitting limited rear wheel spin and slight front wheel lift, while Dynamic Pro has a higher tolerance for wheel spin and doesn't suppress wheelies at all. The DDC/ASC and ABS can also be manually disengaged in any ride mode setting. The dynamic ride modes also enable the dynamic setting for the optional dynamic ESA, but let's save that suspension discussion later. Confused yet? Well, let me muddy things further. My test bike at the XR Press introduction, held in Muskoka Lakes, Ontario, featured the Ride Modes Pro upgrade. However, the Dynamic Pro setting wasn't enabled. It requires a special plugin, similar to Enduro Pro mode on the R1200 GS/A. My XR Press bike was also fresh out of the crate. And when I mean fresh, I mean 11 miles on the odometer fresh. As such, the rev limit was restricted from its usual 11,000 redline to somewhere around 9k. And speaking of mud, Our day aboard the XR included intermittent showers, with road surfaces damp and drying, at best, but often they were glistening with freshly fallen rain. The handful of dirt sections on our 150-mile route were wet as well. The adverse weather and redline restrictions spoiled full engine performance evaluations. However, conditions were ideal for demonstrating the benefit of rain mode. The relatively mellow throttle was so pleasing that I didn't venture much out of its safety net on the nasty wet stuff. However, when I did switch into road ride mode, everything was drama-free thanks to the DTC and ABS Pro systems. The XR proved itself a beast even with its claws retracted. Ample torque churns out across the power band. The Beamer can crawl along at low RPM no problem, with a potent mid-range getting things moving fast, so there isn't much need to keep it revving high. In fact, when you do spool it up, which I did on the rare open-end, semi-dry patches of road, the XR goes into full-bore, what was that term? Yes, face blistering mode. The only fault I can find with engine performance was a persistent vibration at around 4,000 to 5,000 RPM. But the buzz wasn't overly irritating and quite easy to forgive when a twist of the grip yields immediate, visceral acceleration. The conditions of the road and bike inhibited my experience, but I'd reckon the XR a more than a worthy match for the Multistrada in terms of engine performance. A 6-speed transmission package is highlighted by the Gear Shift Assist Pro, yet another option included in the premium spec, $475 as standalone accessory. Featured on other BMW models, including the R1200RS we'd ride the following day, the Shift Assist delivers quick shifter upshifts as well as clutch-less downshifts. The XR's Shift Assist stood out to me as much smoother in operation than those I've sampled on the RS and R1200RT models. The XR's chassis follows the lead of its S1000R sibling, with some important deviations. A revised steering head angle and longer swing arm stretches the wheelbase to 61 inches, 4.3 inches more than the R model. The aluminum frame's rear segment has also been strengthened, to support increased load capacity and fulfill the XR's touring pretensions. The R and XR suspensions share similar hardware, 46mm inverted fork and rear shock, but the XR adds 1.2 inches of travel to the front, 5.9 inches, and 0.8 inches to the rear, 5.5 inches. BMW also offers an optional dynamic ESA, electronic suspension adjustment, for the S1000XR. The DESA system modulates suspension damping based off inputs from sensors measuring acceleration, deceleration, and banking angle, with electrically actuated control valves automatically adjusting the damping rate in real time. There are two DESA settings, Road and Dynamic. Road is the default ESA setting for the rain and road ride modes, while Dynamic is the default for Dynamic and Dynamic Pro. But riders can override either setting at the push of a button, so you can have Dynamic ESA in road ride mode, or vice versa. Or is it versa vice? Dynamic. If you are scrunching your brow in confusion at all this, then you know what my face looked like inside my helmet as I tried to make sense of it all through a rain-splattered visor. Here's all you need to know, the fancy electronic crap works. And it works really well too. At first I tiptoed through corners because the roads were so damned slick looking. Plus those Canadian winters beat up the rural roads pretty well and require frequent patching, so surface quality fluctuated as well. But the XR schemed across everything without care. I noted a stiffening of the suspension when switching to dynamic for sportier riding, although, again, the weather conditions didn't cater to crazy balls-to-the-wall riding. The DESA suspension does its thing, imperceptibly smoothing and stabilizing. I can't find fault. But of all the electronic doohickeys festooning the XR, I was most impressed by the ABS Pro. The ABS moniker is a misnomer of sorts, because when I think of ABS it's in the $H%T, I gots to stop, context, where you panic brake and the ABS keeps you from losing traction by obvious interventions that manifest in noticeable pulses at the lever/pedal. No, No, no. This ABS Pro is more like enhanced performance braking. The most noticeable demonstration of the ABS Pro's advantage is during corner braking, where the bike doesn't stand up when applying the front brake. Instead, the ABS Pro system makes minute modulations to the front brake calipers so that the bike holds its lean angle. As with the XR's other electronic aids, I was tentative to the test ABS Pro on the soaked road surfaces, but once I did, it surprised me with its effectiveness. Sharp corner approaching on a wet road, tip it in, lean it over and squeeze the brakes. The bike slows but doesn't move from its line. I know that sounds wrong, but that's what happens. It's remarkable. And speaking of corners, the XR is quick to tip in and change direction. It claims a 502 pound curb weight, and, if anything, feels even lighter on its toes. It's a neutral handling bike with an upright riding position and a tall, wide handlebar that provides good leverage. Is it on par with the Multistrada? It's definitely comparable, and I only wish I'd ridden the bike the day after, when the weather was perfect. Still, I was impressed.